Happy holidays, everyone. I'm Dylan. This is Carlo. This is All You Can Board, and it is time again for our annual holiday buyer's guide, where we're going to go over 10 categories that we've picked out, some that are carrying over from last year, some that are unique to this year, and give our recommendations on games you want to pick up this holiday season for people in your life that you're buying gifts for. So there are 10 categories, like I said. I think there's 4 new ones and 6 carryovers, I believe, from last year. So we kept 6 that we liked. We've replaced 4 with some new ones, and they're going to be it's not like the categories are just like 2 players and co-op games. Like we've kind of tried to like cater them to specific situations and have some fun with them, so you'll kind of see things all over the place. And if you have suggestions for categories for next year, let us know and we'll consider that as well for next year.
Yep, and if you want some additional suggestions, feel free to go back and watch last year's video, because our opinion on a lot of those games still remains the same.
And no games are doubling up.
Exactly. So 20 unique games here, 20 unique games last year, so plenty of gift ideas across the board there.
Yeah.
And we've made sure to not have any overlap with each other as well.
Yep.
So,
and the first category we're going to go for is for someone who is board game curious, which is essentially our way of saying a gateway game.
Yeah. And just so you know, in case we mention prices along the way, you say, oh, this game is probably around this amount kind of thing. This is all in Canadian dollars. So,
yeah.
So for the person who's board game curious, I have chosen The Quest for El Dorado. The reason for this is that it is like the main reason is because of the fact that it's a race game. So for people who, there's always a bit of a barrier when you're trying to get someone into games who either might not have played them before, or they might be, like you said, just curious but not quite know what to expect. And I think, most people have played like something along the lines of like whether it was Snakes and Ladders or some other type of game that you had to kind of roll dice and then move along a board and it's the first person to get to the end, right? The concept of a race is easy for anyone to understand, even if you don't play games. So the fact you can say, hey, look, there's this, you set up a different map every time and we're racing, the first person to get to El Dorado wins. Like, I can see people just getting excited about that aspect of a race. And then when you say, yeah, and you're playing cards that let you kind of navigate the different terrain, and you can buy new cards that give you special abilities and allow you to kind of cheat the terrain and take shortcuts and stuff.
Yeah.
The blocking, just a really great game, 2 to 4 players, plays in, maybe the quickest game we'd have was maybe like 30, 40 minutes, but it's usually 45 to an hour kind of range. But 2 to 4 players, great at every player count, just a very welcoming, easy game for anyone to learn and play.
Yep, I love this game. We both do. Although the only thing I'll add is if you do want to see how it plays, I would highly recommend going to our live stream and scrubbing to the timestamp of when we played this on the live stream, because it actually was a really entertaining game. We both took different strategies, and you'll get to see a full playthrough of us going, since we haven't really done playthroughs on our channel yet.
Yeah, true.
That's an opportunity for you guys to see us playing it, and I really actually like that session that we played.
Yeah, no, it was a really fun game. Yeah. And in case you're looking for it on our channel, it's near the end of May of 2022. So
exactly.
That was my recommendation, The Quest for El Dorado.
Great choice. All right, so for mine, I'm going with a newer game, and that is Decorum. So the reason I'm picking this as the board game curious is because I like the fact that it's cooperative, and for someone who's wanting to get into games, they might not be thinking like, I want to get into games and I'm going to start hosting some game nights. I'm going to have like a 4 players come over, we're all going to play. So you might be starting with something smaller, like just with one other person, and keeping it very like mellow with the rules and stuff like that. And Decorum for me is a game that I could just see being really, really easy to get into. Like there is a bit of rules overhead in terms of you're essentially cohabitating in this house, and I have desires of what I want to accomplish, you have desires of what you want to accomplish. We don't know what those are, and you're discerning them through the responses you're getting to things you're placing. Like I could place a lamp here and you could say, I like that, and so I know something I'm doing is positive to your secret goals. Or if you say you don't like that, it's the reverse. So that's really the essence of the entire game. It's easy to approach that way, but it'll last you a long time because of the envelope structure, the mission structure. You'll have a bunch you can go through. You can play it with 3 or 4, so you have that option. It is unique missions for those, but the 2-player experience could just be such a barrier-free way to kind of like board game curious, get into board game where you sit down with one person, you try it out, and if you're like, yeah, this is really speaking to me, now you can kind of open up and go into something else. So I think it functions well as a gateway game in that sense, with the low rules overhead and just a really inviting, simple kind of approach to it.
Yeah. I think it's a great pick, and the theme, I think this does a better job than my pick of roping in someone who's maybe even less interested in board games.
Right.
Like someone who has no interest in games or whatever probably isn't going to be able to be convinced for El Dorado, but something about this, they might be like, that's interesting. I didn't know a game could do something like that.
Yeah,
right?
One of my closest friends, when I described this game, she said like, oh yeah, I actually do kind of want to play that, or I am interested in that. So like, I think the theme is just something that, like, again, board game curious, don't play a lot of board games. You could kind of rope them in, and then you get them in the hobby.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's the whole goal.
I like it.
We're just trying to get them.
Very misleading.
That's Decorum.
Cool.
All right. Our next category, my phone keeps going off here, is for the gamer who enjoys alone time. This is our solo game category.
So I will just preface this by saying that the game I like more of the two is the one that you're going to be talking about.
Right, I stole your pick.
But I tried to pick a different side to this. So the game that you're going to talk about obviously does not have dice. Well, I shouldn't say obviously because people don't pick it. But I'm going to be talking about Under Falling Skies. Yes. So this is a game I've spoken about somewhat extensively on the channel because I did end up getting rid of my copy. But I do think it's a really good game. And Under Falling Skies is a solo-only game. And it's sort of this like Space Invaders style puzzle where you set up a series of boards that represents a city, and you have these ships that are like the aliens at the top of the board, and they're kind of just descending towards your city. Every time they get to the city, they do a certain amount of damage, and then they kind of reappear to the back of the top. And so it's just this onslaught of ships hitting your city, and you're rolling dice and putting them in different slots on your board to do different abilities and try and get a certain amount of research up this track. Anyways, I won't go much more into the rules, but it's very puzzly in terms of what you're doing with your dice, how you're spending them, when you choose to re-roll them, where on your board you put them. There's a campaign mode in the box that you can play through and all kinds of stuff. So I got a good probably 10 to 12 hours out of the game before I personally was ready to move on with my copy. But that's mostly because I'm not a big fan of myself of sitting there playing dice-based games solo over and over. So I kind of hit a point where I was kind of done with it. But if you're the type of person that really likes solo dice-based games, this is for sure one of the better ones I've played, and the replay value is very, very high. So if you're looking for a dice-based solo game, you can't really do much better than Under Falling Skies.
Do you still have this?
No.
Okay, I was gonna say this is one that I realized now. I'm like, I really should have just like taken it off your hands, and then when I was done with it, I could have sold it again or something, because this was one that when I got to the point like around the holidays where I have vacation and I'm just gonna like not be having to worry about work and we're probably taking a break from AYCB in terms of like we have our top 50 videos coming out, whatever. It would have been a great one to just like play in the mornings or whatever when I wake up, and I should have, but I'll just track down my own copy.
I was gonna say,
I'm gonna use your advice in
yeah,
this buyer's guide.
If you have access to try it at least, like I think you would like it for sure.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, Under Falling Skies.
My pick is the one I stole from Carlo. This is Hadrian's Wall. So Hadrian's Wall is one of my favorite solo games now, and I've only played it I think 3 times. But it's a roll and write, but it's just, or not a roll and write. I guess
it's kind of a flip and write,
yes,
but
exactly.
It's a blank and write.
Blank and write. And it's I don't want to say it's, I guess, yeah, it is a heavier kind of version of that genre, but it's just like in the first game I played of it, I remember leaving that session thinking I want to play it immediately again, and I did, because I want to just like try a different strategy. I want to try something different. I want to see a different experience, and I don't always leave roll and writes or those type of blank and write genre games feeling that way. Even if I want to play them again, it's usually not necessarily always for that reason of like I want to approach it and do something drastically different. And with Hadrian's Wall, it left me with that impression in a really strong way right from the start. And there is so much to explore going on these sheets. Like, it is complicated, but when you get over that rules overhead, like when you start to understand it, it is not complicated at that point to me.
No, it's an easy rule set to remember.
Yes.
There's a lot to read, but once you learn it, it really sticks.
It's the initial, like, learning the rules that it's 100% you're going to sit down, you're going to look at it, and you're going to be feeling a little bit overwhelmed and a little bit, it's going to feel daunting. But when you get over that hurdle, especially if it's something you come back to regularly enough that you don't have to, like, relearn things, I think it's one that people are, like, really going to enjoy. Just, like, I picture myself, like, so for the holidays for me, whenever I think of like my ideal holiday situation, it's always just like I'm on vacation, I don't have stuff going on, I wake up on what would now feel like a Sunday, but it could be a Tuesday, it could be a Wednesday, it doesn't matter, and I'm having a coffee and like there's a light snow going on outside, and I'm just like, you know, just doing something on my own before I go to like a gathering and have more like social stuff going on. And sitting down with Hadrian's Wall with like a light snowfall outside, drinking my coffee and just playing around on the sheet just sounds so great that I really, really need to get this in my collection.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I've done exactly what you said, and it is great. I would highly recommend it.
So yeah, it's not, and this plays 1 to 6, but I think we both agree the solo mode is probably where it shines the most. Yeah. But you also just still have the option then to play with other people, which is a great bonus. If you have other people that are around and like, well, can I play too? It's like, jump in, like you can all enjoy it, right?
Yeah.
So
and I don't think you mentioned, but it's 2 sheets.
Yes,
most
2
roll and
sheets.
writes only have 1. This is 2 big sheets. Yeah. So this is for people who really like alone time, because it is a bit of a longer game. It's going to take you usually at least an hour, but it's worth it.
And there's reasons to come back to like beat your score and
oh yeah,
kind of stuff. It's
and
really
the
fun.
designer has made a campaign mode that is on the Board Game Geek forums that you can play along with a campaign that is apparently very good. I haven't tried it yet, but yeah, lots of replay value.
Yeah, so that is Hadrian's Wall. That is my solo pick.
Excellent pick.
All right, next category is for the large gatherings around the holidays, or not around the holidays, just large gatherings in general.
Right. So this is a game I've talked about numerous times on the channel before. I don't have my copy with me right now because it's seemingly always being lent out to someone.
just start charging.
I was going to say whether it's you or one of my sisters-in-law or whatever, but that is Wavelength.
Yeah.
So this is a game that goes up to 12 players. I think you can play with 2. I wouldn't really recommend it as much with the lower player counts. And technically you can even go above 12. There's not like a limited number of components. So really you can play with as many people as you want. The whole point of the 12-player cap is just to be able to have proper conversations in a room. But the basic idea is you have this dial that you turn, and you are basically have a card that gives you 2 opposite ends of this kind of wavelength, like, for example, good and bad, or underrated and overrated. And you're going to be given kind of... this dial's going to be pointing somewhere. You're going to be the only person who knows, and you're basically going to come up with a clue that is trying to indicate to the other people where that needle is pointing behind the secret little screen. I might not have done a great job explaining it. It's kind of an odd game, especially because the component is pretty unique to
It's a hard one to
Wavelength.
explain. I always found.
Yeah. But yeah, it's basically just some people are going like, no, I think the needle would go here because they said that it was an overrated and this person that, and someone's like, no, because I know that they don't like those kind of things. So everyone's trying to argue about where they think that needle is set, and then once you agree, you kind of reveal the screen and see where how right you were. You can play it on separate teams. You can play it all cooperatively. Very flexible, plays great with different ages, different levels of gaming experience. It can be an icebreaker game. You can play with people you know super well. Like, I've played it in so many different groups, different settings, whatever, and it has always been a hit. Everyone seems to love this game when I show it to them. And yeah, whether it's family, friends, whatever, I just think in terms of like a large gathering, this is usually my number 1 go-to game these days, just because of that flexibility.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great pick. This was actually going to be my pick too, but Carlo had the same one and we compromised.
Yeah.
It's an awesome choice. I borrowed it from you because of that exact reason, taking it to work events and stuff, because it's just such a fun game to play at those large gatherings. You can really just play with any amount of people that you want.
Yeah.
Like, even though like I'm sure that gets to a point where it's too much, like you can kind of customize this how you want. Again, it's even with the scoring. Like it's just it can be a full-on game, or it can be just a really fun activity you're doing. Like it is just an awesome, fun, hilarious experience every time.
For sure.
Yeah.
I will say that of these types of games, it's maybe on the little pricier side because of that dial component kind of thing. It's probably at least $40 or $45 Canadian. So, but if you can afford the kind of slightly higher price point for that type of game, then yeah, Wavelength's about as good of a pick as I can come up with.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so my pick, and this is leaning into my love for like hidden information deception type of games, hidden role type games, and also the aspect of like I've heard a lot of people say around the holidays or even just at parties they've had like the whole like murder mystery, in a large group is always really fun, and it's something that's been around for a while. So I chose, and this game plays up to 12, which is a big thing as well. This is Deception, Murder in Hong Kong. Maybe the theme isn't like going to be the best for every holiday with like a murder in the title, but
you don't spend the holidays thinking about deception and murder.
I mean, well, I do. But,
no, it is an awesome pick.
Yeah, it's like I always just think that like when I think big, large groups, if I'm not thinking of a party game in the style like Wavelength and Just One and code names and things like that, I always love the idea of playing a hidden role game, because especially if you're playing specifically with your family and you have that like rapport and that connection, everything, you feel better calling people out and saying that they're lying or pointing fingers. But you always just have those surprises of who is really good, like whose uncle or the uncle is really good at lying, or like, oh, it can't be the aunt or whatever. Like you have those moments where it's just really, really funny, like who's lying and who's deceiving and everything. And this one is specifically just really intricate. I've always loved it as out of all the type of like hidden role games, or is that why am I thinking there's another type of genre I'm supposed to be calling this? Hidden roles,
deduction
I think,
maybe,
right? Yeah,
whatever. You're trying to deduce what items people use and stuff, but
exactly.
I've only played it once and it was like years ago now. So.
Yeah, so like everyone has different cards in front of them that essentially represent like the items they've used to potentially enact the murder, and then the other one I think is like locations. I can't remember now. It's been a while since I played it too. But you essentially have like 8 cards in front of you, and everyone does have 8 cards in front of them. And so the one person who is like has this separate role that is trying to communicate to the rest of the group who is the person that has enacted this murder and with which items specifically they've used, is having to use no communication, just these boards in the middle of the table, and they're placing these little like bullet tokens onto different aspects, trying to lead people in a direction. And then everyone's looking at the items around the table being like, well, what they're trying to lead us to could be the axe over here, or it could be the knife over here. And so we've narrowed it down to these two people, but what works in conjunction with the other item that's in front of them. And it's just like everyone is working together to try to like figure out who this person is. And obviously the one person is lying, and everyone else will be like, well, no, it's not me. And like it's going to be one that causes a lot of laughter around the table, a lot of fun. You're probably going to want to play multiple rounds.
Yeah.
You're going to
lots of accusations.
Yeah, different people are going to want to be the one detective and trying that roll out. So these type of games I think are just great around the holidays, or just large gatherings in general. And playing up to 12 obviously incorporates, being able to accommodate a larger group, especially if you're meeting with like, extended family things.
I like this too. The play time right on the box says 15 to 30 minutes, and for these types of games you need that, because the more people, the higher chance that someone has to stop to go to the bathroom or someone's looking at their phone or whatever. So like,
and it's easier to just say like, let's do another round, or like one more round and then we'll call it quits.
Yeah, or you swap out, someone has to go do something, let you join in for a round kind of thing.
Yeah, so that is Deception, Murder in Hong Kong. That is my large gathering pick.
Great pick. Yeah, I'm glad you let me take Wavelength, because I think that was a better pick than what my secondary pick would have been.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's a great. We got to play that again.
Yeah, that's so good. So the next category is for when accessibility is top of mind, and I will preface this one by saying the way we approach this category is specifically trying to pick there's a lot of ways that accessibility could matter when picking board games, video games, anything. So it's hard to find something that just like says like, yeah, this covers every single base. It's probably impossible to do. There's a lot of different things that could be out there. So what we tried to do is each kind of pick one specific area of accessibility and then target a game for that, and that we'll kind of approach it that way every year, so that we can really hone in on this specific accessibility issue and feel like we're doing it justice, rather than just trying to like really cover a whole lot of bases and not doing any of them really like in the best way possible. So we've each picked our own that we're going to kind of cover. They might also help in other areas too, and we'll mention that, but we've kind of honed in on a specific one. And last really quick preface is that a lot of these accessibility issues are not universal. It's not like we could say this is going to universally be good for anybody who if say I was doing anxiety, anybody who has anxiety, this would be perfect for them. Like it's a malleable thing. Like I could have a different experience as someone with anxiety than someone else. So we're doing it with our best knowledge. We're not saying it's 100% going to be universal, but we're trying to pick games that, to the best of our ability, we think could be pretty good.
Yeah.
So I'll let you go first.
All right, I am going to be talking about Calico. So this is a 1 to 4 player tile laying game where you have a little sort of dual layered board that you sink these kind of tiles into, and you're basically going back and forth with the other players, or if you're going solo, you just play until your board is filled up. On your turn, you're going to have 2 tiles in your hand. You're going to place 1, and then you're going to draw a new tile off the 3 that are face up on the board. So that's all you're going to do is like you place a tile, take a tile, and you have these goals that you have to surround on your quilt. Very simple, quick playing game, but it's very, very brain burny. It's tough. The reason why I've chosen this and the kind of accessibility issue that I'm looking to address here is overcoming color blindness. So, and the reason I chose this is because, first off, I think we've realized the longer we've been in the hobby that there are more and more people, like more and more gamers who are colorblind than we initially realized. I think more and more we see people comment on it on our videos, and we're realizing like, hey, this is more common than I initially thought.
And there's different degrees of it too, right?
Exactly, different degrees. I can't pretend that I, for 1 second, understand, all of it or the intricacies of which colors. And yeah, exactly. But the point is that, we have so many games, it shouldn't be that hard because we have all these templates. We have all these successful games that have overcome color blindness by having like cards that, these cards will have a color, but they also have a symbol that matches that color so that if you don't see, So, and it feels like this past year we had Azul Queen's Garden come out, which was basically a similar game to Calico, more complex, and we criticized the fact that it wasn't colorblind friendly. They had the things with the yellow tiles. Anyways, I won't get all into that, but this has tiles of different colors, but the colors each, like the green tiles have a little clover and the pink tiles have a little like flower or whatever, each of those symbols, but then they also have different patterns. So even if this game was recreated in black and white, like if you repurposed the entire game into black and white right now, it would still be completely functional because of all the symbols. Then even the cat tokens that you use to show the little scoring cards, like those are all shaped differently. So again, even if it was in black and white, like the shape of the tokens is different. Everything about the game, there's no barrier in terms of that color blindness aspect, and I appreciate that, AEG and Flatout went to the extra effort to do that when, it would have been easier to just like make the game however, but they took the time to do that, and I think it's an important thing to highlight. And the other thing is that it is just truly a great game and a very affordable price point. Top-notch components. Like I think this game's like $32, $35. Tons of replay value, just a solid game, and one I highly recommend.
Awesome pick. Love it. I mean, I've only played it a couple times, but Calico's a great game, and I think those are great reasons as well. So
Thank you.
great pick. So for mine, the area of accessibility that I focused on, actually I'll show the game first, is For Sale. So For Sale is my pick, and the reason I'm picking this is the area I focused on this year was specifically ADHD. So I did some research ahead of time. I talked to some people, and the biggest takeaways that I got was you generally want to try to find a game that it doesn't have something where you're trying to think like 3 or 4 or 5 turns ahead and doing tons of strategic planning. I mean, again, this isn't universal, but in general, you want something that's like, you can kind of just live in that initial moment and the decision you have to make without thinking so far ahead. And also downtime is a big one. If you have tons of downtime and you're going through like 5 other people's turns and then before you have anything that you're doing or taking part in, that can also be a barrier. So I picked For Sale specifically because I think it addresses both of those in a really good way. For Sale is a really, really quick playing game. I mean, first of all, I should just say it's a great game. We love For Sale.
Yeah.
So
Some would say it's a classic.
Yeah, exactly. I would advocate for this in many different regards, but there is very little downtime, if any, because you're always involved in some way. Even if someone else is deciding what to bet, like the decisions don't take very long, first of all, and like it impacts you, like watching everything that's going on. So you're kind of always involved in some way, sure. And it's going to come back to you to make your decision really quickly as well. And like it's just like the rule overhead in general is super low. You don't have to know all the strategy on how to like best play or best win the first time you play. I would even recommend not trying to figure that out the first time you play. Just sit down and know the rules and go into it. You'll pick up the rest as you go. But it's really just, here's a selection. What do you bid? Like that's it. In the second phase, it's which do I play to try to win the higher check total?
Yeah.
Right? So
buy low, sell high.
Yeah, like it's really simplistic in that way, and you don't really have to. You're not thinking like. I mean, yeah, you're thinking sometimes to the second phase in terms of what you're getting, what you're sacrificing, but not in a way that's like, really, really in-depth or strategic. And even if you get to that point, that's after you've played For Sale a bunch of times and you understand the strategy better. You don't need that the first time you play. So the fact that this accommodates many people, that you can have a lot of friends playing around the table and you're not having that downtime, I just think there's lots of aspects to For Sale that really would, benefit someone who, might be dealing with ADHD and has problems with certain games, where they can play a game like For Sale and have a really good time and then want to come back to it and have that be a game that they revisit a lot. So
nice.
Any opportunity I have to talk about For Sale is always one I'm going to take, because I think it's just a game more people need to play. And you can try it on a board game arena if you want to see if you enjoy it too.
Yeah,
so
awesome pick. Love For Sale, and yeah, those are some excellent reasons.
Great. Okay. Next one is for that extra special someone, and basically.
One quick thing about that travel. That was the travel edition of
Yes.
For Sale, which is much cheaper. The big box is like this, whatever.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
For that extra special someone is our category for when you're going to splurge on someone a little bit more. You're going to buy them a little bit more of an expensive game. Maybe it's your partner, maybe it's your special friend, whatever your special friend. The way I said that was weird. Just someone that you're going to go a little bit above and beyond for it, and so we picked more of an expensive game for this category.
Yep.
Yeah. I'll let you
take
it away.
So the one I'm featuring here is Ankh, Gods of Egypt. So there's a couple reasons why I have this game on here. First off, this is one of the most expensive games I've ever bought. I don't normally buy games that are, like in the excess of $100. I think this was like 110-ish kind of range, but it's also a big chunk of what you're paying for here is the components, the quality of the miniature figures that are sculpted, epic. Like when you see the way this game looks, you'll understand why it costs what it does. Yeah. But I think it makes sense for this type of game. Like there are other games where I think, this cardboard standees would be fine or whatever. But for this type of kind of like war game on a map where there's a lot of conflict and stuff, it's very fitting. And this is the type of game that if I wasn't in the same financial position, I might have not been able to afford a game like this and just say, I'll just get to try it maybe through a friend. Yeah. So I think this is the type of game that a lot of people would want in their collection or want to try, but just can't justify buying for themselves. And of these kind of big box area majority games, I haven't played a ton of them yet, but this has really stood out to me. I only played this once so far and for the first time recently, but there's so much cool stuff going on with the gods in near the end of like merging together, and you can have these camel caravans that divide the land, and you can change which conflicts are happening in which order, and there's so much cool stuff going on here. And I just think this is the type of game too that if someone had this on their shelf, they would make their friends want to come over and play games with them more often. And that's where I think that comes into play too, is like when I showed this to people this past weekend, we played I think like 10 games on the weekend, and even though this wasn't the standout game for me, I really liked it, but everyone else was like, oh, I want to play Ankh again. It was something about that table presence and just the kind of,
Yeah.
So I'll leave it at that. It's a very good game and something that I think, more people would probably like to get a chance to play. But it's the cost is definitely a bit of a barrier.
Yeah, no, this is a great pick. I've wanted to play this for a while. I'm glad that you got to the table and that you enjoyed it, and now that you can, now having that experience, you can teach it to me and stuff.
Yeah.
Because I can't wait to approach. I want to play more area control games, and like you said, the presence and like the miniatures and all that kind of stuff is just one that like Rising Sun. You just like it seems. That when you sit down to play, you're like, this is going to be a special game
it's
because
epic,
of what you're,
for sure.
Yeah, great
for
pick.
sure. Ankh, Gods of Egypt. We'll definitely talk about this more on the channel once we've played it more and get to review it.
Mm-hmm. All right, so my pick for this category is a game called Sleeping Gods, and really the only reason I picked this is because if it fits into this category, that means that I'm Carlo's special someone because he got this for me as a gift. So this is Sleeping Gods. This is obviously a massive campaign game, and it's almost twofold why I picked this. One, it is pricier, and so it fits into the category in that realm. But as a secondary reason, if you're getting someone that's special in your life, that campaign game, there's a good chance that you might end up partaking in that campaign game with them. And I don't mean that from a selfish reason. It's just like you're going to be a little bit careful who you buy a campaign game for, because if I just go and buy a campaign game for someone I see like not too often, or for some reason I'm buying them a campaign game and I don't get along with them super well. And then they're like, well, yeah, we can play it together. You have to be buying for someone you're going to potentially want to sit down and play it with. So Sleeping Gods, I think, kind of...
Are you accusing me of that?
No, of course not. Of course not. But it's like, so we've only played this once, but we played a long session.
Yeah, a few hours of it.
Yeah, so I think we played like 4 or 5 hours of it. Like we played it for a while, and we got pretty far with it. But it is it's a story narrative-based campaign game, and it's very story-focused, where you're essentially like moving on a boat throughout the waters and going into different locations, and tackling the expansion lets you tackle different dungeons and stuff like that, and everyone has a different crew members that are a part of the ship, and every time you play, no matter how many players you play with, all the crew members are involved, but you're going to manage different amounts of them. You're having battles and fights with different monsters. You're having to make decisions, and like different decisions and things you encounter will affect other areas you go, or you'll have to revisit areas because now you have items you didn't have before to be able to tackle stuff. Like it's a story-focused, narrative-driven campaign game that has beautiful visuals, and I think you're really getting this for someone's special, because yes, it's in more of an expensive buy, but also it is just it's a special, unique type of game in that regard. Like a lot of people don't realize, that board games can be this too. Mm-hmm. Like some people who don't play a lot of board games hear board games and they gravitate towards things like Catan or Monopoly or Scrabble or Ticket to Ride, and those kind of experiences they're used to, and they don't realize that a board game can be like this wildly different and this special and this grand and vast and story driven and beautiful, and I feel like you can really find that special someone, get them this, and almost change their perspective on board games a little bit too. So.
I would say, especially if you know anyone who likes those big open world exploration video games, they would probably like this.
Yeah, exactly. That is Sleeping Gods. That's my pick for the special someone category.
Very nice.
Ooh, that's a heavy one. All right, next up, I'm trying to remember exactly what we called this one. I think so. This is essentially our lifestyle category. So this is for the person who only wants one game. And what we mean by that is like this might be a person who's not necessarily going to have a board game collection, but they are interested, or they just maybe they're not even going to have a shelf to have board games. They just want to slide one game in, so something that's going to last them a long time, that they're going to get tons of replay value out of, and they can revisit and then not feel like, well, but now I'm done with this game, so I have to get another one. They can sit with this for a long time and be satisfied.
Yeah, like multiple years, possibly forever, who knows. Yeah. But yeah, so the game I'm talking about here is what is currently my number one game of all time, Agricola. So some of you who watch the channel regularly might be tired of hearing me talk about this game, but when I racked my brain about what was I going to pick for this kind of lifestyle game category, there's only one game I've ever had that I could think of truly as a lifestyle game. Like, yes, to a lesser extent, Carcassonne and Catan, because those were like the two first kind of modern day games that got me into the hobby, but once I discovered Agricola, I pretty much stopped playing almost all other games for like years. Like my group and everyone in my gaming group who I showed this to, this became like our game. And there was a period of, if you looked at a span of maybe 4 or 5 years, I would say maybe 90 to 95% of my board gaming in that span was probably Agricola. Different player counts, playing with played with the same person. We played 2 players probably 30, 40 times at least, and there's still so much to explore.
Yeah.
The game is different every player count depending what resources are there. Sorry, I should say in case anyone doesn't know, it's like a farming simulation game, worker placement. You could grow your family, but you have the upkeep of having to feed your family.
Really punishing.
You can get more people throughout the game, but the more people you have, the more food, etc., etc. So it's a game of expansion and growth, but you have to be able to support your expansion. So it's about how bold do you want to be, how much do you want to try and do with your farm, that kind of thing.
Yep.
But the thing about this being a lifestyle game is the competitive scene for this game, the amount of, the game has been out for 15 years. There's still, people who've played this game thousands of times still find this game has brutally difficult decisions. There's an online competitive community that talks about, it's a community of players that basically dictates which cards are banned and not banned in competitive tournaments because they're playing it so much. It's just one of the most explored, loved kind of deep strategy games out there. And for me, it was just a no-brainer pick. I could go back to this being my lifestyle game again. I've been playing it so much on Board Game Arena. I'm loving this again. Yeah, if you're looking for a game to sink hundreds of hours into, if you can get over that kind of punishing aspect of it, there's nothing else as rewarding as this for me personally.
Yeah, I should have expected it that since Agricola didn't make it on last year's Holiday Buyer's Guide, that it was
exactly.
You couldn't go 2 years without squeezing it.
No,
it's got to eventually get on there.
Exactly.
So yeah, it makes sense. Especially for your experience personally, the amount that you've played Agricola, it would be it's so easy for you to advocate for it as this kind of the category lifestyle game because
it's been that for me.
You've played it so much, right? Yeah. And still want to come back to it. So yeah, in that regard, good pick. But in all other regards, bad pick. I'm just kidding. No,
that is a good pick.
My pick is a game that is continuing every single month, or every time I play it, I should say, to grow on me and to climb on my overall lists and everything, and that is Res Arcana. So Res Arcana I'm picking because even though it doesn't have, I'm certain it doesn't have the same level of strategy and depth and that you just talked about with Agricola, with the meta and coming back to it and exploring it that way necessarily, it is a game that always has a variance to it to the last one I played when I sit down and play it. Because not only are you going to have different cards involved and different strategies based on what is in that game and what isn't, you can also play it with the draft format where you're actually kind of choosing and using strategy to be what combination do I want to be more successful, or you can play a randomized, which has its I honestly don't even know which way I like more, because the random aspect of what you have to deal with, what you've been dealt, is really fun to solve that puzzle and how can I turn this mess of stuff or this unique collection of stuff into a winning strategy. And yeah, it doesn't always work out, but games of Res Arcana don't take that long, so it's okay if you had a bad setup. But the variability in setup is so great that when you get into the game, it's just so much fun to figure out how you're going to win or how you're going to create an engine with what you have there and outpace your opponents in that way. Not to mention that, even outside of the base box, you have options now to expand this with expansions, which we've only played the first one, but the first expansion, there's no reason not to just include it. It's so good.
Barely adds any rules complexity at all, and it's just more cards,
more variability.
Better, yeah.
There's just more going on. And then it seems like the second expansion is just going to be even more of that. So it's a game that I constantly want to revisit, and it never dulls on me. It only grows on me, and that is, I don't want to say rare with games, but in general, board games, I find even some of my favorite ones, I can get to a point where I'm but now I feel like I've seen all there is this year. There's less.
The magic wears off a little bit, kind of thing. Yeah.
This one, even with multiple plays on Board Game Arena, multiple plays of the physical version, I just want to keep coming back to it. And I don't know why I don't own my own copy yet. Mostly, I guess, because when we play games, I know I'm playing with you, and I'll just play yours.
And it's on Board Game Arena, so you can get your fix online, right?
But I do need to get my own copy because it's such a great game, and I think it fits this category really well. So
I totally agree. It's an amazing, amazing game, and even when you mention the draft, you still don't have any control over which cards you're going to draw and start the game with. So even though you have control over the draft, if you draw 3 cards and those don't synergize and the combo card you needed was in your deck, there's still a puzzle. There's still there's always something to figure out. Amazing game.
Yeah, I love it. That is Res Arcana. All right, next category is for the person who bucks the trend, and that is our way of saying, you're finding them a hidden gem game. They don't want to just get the popular game. They don't want the Catans. They don't want the Ticket to Rides. They don't want the whatever that year, the Wingspans or whatever. You want to find them something that no one else has, so they can have this unique, really good game. Yeah, a hidden gem.
And it could be because you know that they have all the common games already, or because when people come and say, "Who's that cool game?" you want to be the person that they say, "Yeah, my so and so got this game for me."
Yeah, exactly.
This is the most unique game definitely the most unique one I own, and maybe the most unique one I've ever played, and it's definitely an underrated game. This is Cosmic Frog, with a subtitle of World Eaters from Dimension Zero. So I've only played this once so far, but I've been dying to get this back to the table. It plays 2 to 6 players, and it's a game of absolute chaos. The basic idea of the theme is you're a giant intergalactic frog. You are gobbling up broken shards of planets to store in your gullet. Then you're jumping into the ether to disgorge the contents of your gullet into your interplanetary vault, as is tradition.
Every time you describe this game, I can tell you're getting so much joy to be like, I'm so glad I get to describe this game.
I love it because I picture myself being on the other end of when I heard about the game and went, "Whoa, this game exists. This is a real game." And then people can go steal stuff from your vault, and you can kick people across the planet and all. It's an amazing game. Has a weird variable turn order. Asteroids fall down on the planet and shatter different parts of the planet. It is the most chaotic. You have to be okay with randomness. You have to be okay with saying, I don't have full control over everything. If I lose, it might just be bad luck. But if you're okay with that, there's nothing else out there like this, both in terms of the theme, the way it plays, just how fun it is, the fact that it accommodates up to 6 players. And I've only played it the one time with 4 players, but I've heard the more you add, the better it is. Just truly a unique game and one I can't wait to play again. It is on the pricier side. I think it's around $70 Canadian, so I realize that might be a barrier, but I truly couldn't pick a more unique game for this from games I know myself. So that is Cosmic Frog.
Set up a session for us to play it already. I blame you that I haven't played this yet.
Yeah, it is my fault. I accept responsibility. Yep.
I can't wait to play it. It sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's great. Cosmic Frog.
Good pick. My pick for this category is a game I've talked about quite a few times. I really enjoy it, and I classify this as a hidden gem because I don't often hear a lot of people talk about it, at least not to me, and that is Enchanted Plumes. This is a little card game that is very much kind of in the same vein. It's probably why I like it so much, we've enjoyed it, as Lost Cities. It kind of scratches that same itch in a way, and you're essentially playing different amounts of plumes in front of you, and a plume is essentially rows of cards that descend in length all the way down to a single card, and you have limitations on which colors you can place based on what is in your first row of the plume. So if I only play red, blue, and green, that means the next row can only have those, and you're scaling down to that single plume at the end, and so you're limited on scoring, and you're also the top row you're getting negative points on, which is a big deal. So you want to kind of play your lower numbers on that top row, ideally, to try to regain points, but with your bigger numbers lower down. But sometimes you can't. You have to play a higher number, and then you're having to compensate for that. So you get bonus points if you completed a plume, but it's not necessary to complete a plume. So there's a lot of decision making going on. You're picking from a row of essentially a market of plumes to get these, or you can pick blindly off the deck. Everyone is doing that. It's really not a complex game when you get into it, but aside from the fact that the only downside to me is it's table space takes up, for a small game, it takes up a lot of table space.
Even just with 2 players, it took up a lot, and it goes up to 5? 6. Sorry.
Yeah.
I haven't played with more than 2 yet.
But it's
3 ones.
It's a generally quick playing game. I think if you play with 6, you're probably getting closer to an hour and stuff. But it's a generally quick playing game with a lot of strategy that, like I said, scratches kind of the same itch as Lost Cities in some way for me anyways. And it's just really, really fun. And it is this hidden gem, and it's really inexpensive. It's small box. It will fit on any shelf. I think it's a game that more people need to play, need to experience, because I also think it functions well as sort of it's not the simplest rules, but it's not super complex, so it kind of can help you take that next step on our gamer journey we've talked about. It could be that sort of a next step game where it's you start to understand strategy a little bit more, but in this beautiful, really accessible looking package. So
yeah, and like you said, there's a lot of overlap with games like Lost Cities, even Arboretum as well, that hand management aspect of I gotta hold these, do I want to hold it to play it, do I want to hold it for later to see if I can get more points out of it, but if I hold it too long it might backfire. Tough decisions the whole way.
Hand management is something we just it's amazing. I enjoy it so much in games the more I encounter it, and it's just as fun in this one. So that is Enchanted Plumes for the person who wants to buck the trends.
Very nice pick. And I'll say, like you said, the price point on that one is that is an awesome
Yeah.
Like a big draw to that game
For sure.
actually is like you're getting a lot for that price point.
Yeah. Next up is for the person who games at 2. So this is someone who's looking specifically for a 2-player game because that is how they primarily play their board games.
Yep, I think we both went with a fairly new game here, and I went with something that I think is going to cover a lot of bases. It's not specific for any type of gamer necessarily, but I think this is going to resonate with a lot of people.
I think so too.
And that is Great Plains. We've talked about this on channel a few times already. We covered it in one of our Own It, Play It, or Skip It videos, so if you want to see our kind of full review on it, you can go there. But the long and short of it is it's 2-player only. It's sort of an abstract game with a variable map setup. Each player gets 20 of these pieces. One player is the snakes, one is the foxes. They function the same. They're not asymmetric in any way. And you're basically just taking turns. At first, you each have these 3 little cave tokens that you're going to put on the map in these sort of possible spots, and then from then on you're just taking turns back and forth for the rest of the game, placing your 20 pieces. You either have to go adjacent to a previous piece of yours or emerge from one of your 3 caves. There's these like little meadows that you're trying to get area majority on ahead of your opponent to score points. That's pretty much it. It's there's little powers you can get along the way too. You can step on spaces that either give you a horse, bear, or an eagle token, and those all work differently. I won't get into how they work, but they change up. Like, I think the rules are 2 or 3 pages. It's very simple, but everyone I've shown this game to has been surprised and gone like, wow, that was a lot better than I expected. And it also is very quick. Like, it's like a 15 to 20 minute game. I've mentioned before, I've played this with people where I like teach them the game and we play 3 rounds of it, like a best of 3 in less than an hour total. I've played it with different kind of types of gamer, different people who like different types of games. Everyone has seemed to really enjoy it, and for me it just continues to stand out. At like, I worried a bit like you when we first played it about, is it going to hold up after this many plays, whatever. I've played it over 10 times now. It's one of my favorite 2-player only games. I love Great Plains, and I think it's going to be hit with pretty much anyone just because of, again, how simple it really is.
Yeah, I agree. I think the simplistic rules, the theme, and the attractiveness of like the look and the feel and everything, I think it's just going to appeal to a lot of people. That someone who games primarily at 2 is going to get lots of mileage out of it. I think in that regard, for sure, yours is a better pick than mine, just because my theme is not nearly as accessible as yours, and I think that can be a big thing for like hitting a wide range of different people you're going to play a 2-player game with. So,
right.
Yeah, so I really like this pick, and I've only played it a couple times, 2 or 3, but I've really enjoyed it both times.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Thank you. That was Great Plains.
My pick is a game that we discovered recently, and I quickly become one of my favorite 2-player games, and that is Caesar! Caesar Roman 20 Minutes, which we have to do every time. We have to always yell it because there's an exclamation mark in the title. This game is fantastic. It's so good. It is a one that me and Carlo, I think, like I said, it's growing on us, and we keep coming back to, and we played it at the cabin. It was one of our favorite experiences there again. It's so interesting to kind of have the balance of like, you have these chips behind your private screen, and you have limited ones that you have access to, and they have numbers on each side, and they have symbols, and they can only play to matching symbols on the board in specific spots. And then the numbers are going to correspond to 2 different sides of territories where you place it. So one number is going to go to one territory, one number is going to go to the other. And generally, you'll have like one like be lower and one be higher. So it could be like a 6 on one side and a 1 on one side. When you surround that entire territory and all the spots with these little discs, you're going to add up the numbers, and whoever has the highest number total out of everything is going to win that territory and get to place one of their pieces in it. The first person to get rid of all their pieces wins. So you want to get rid of these pieces as quick as you can, but you have to kind of be managing, like, if I place this here, I could win this territory, but then I could lose this territory.
Right.
And on top of that, when you win territories next to each other, they chain, and you get to place an extra token onto the board, so it speeds up your victory.
Yeah.
So you kind of like, when you start winning a territory, it kind of dictates where you're trying to win other ones, and then you're trying to compete to stop the other person from doing that.
That's what I was going to say. It's all about pressure points, because then you're putting pressure on your opponent to be like, I got to stop that chain. I can't let them get 3 more free pieces from getting, right?
And there's all the ability little tokens. So when if you're the last person to surround a territory, even if you didn't win the territory, you get the ability in the middle, and that could end up giving you new ways to place your personal tokens onto the board, or other ways to hasten your victory. So there's just a lot going on in a game that does play in 20 minutes. Like when we've sat down and played, I think we both times, or at least one of them, we do best of 3 because it's just like, why not? And it's just a better way to play the game. So it's one that's going to hit the table a lot for me because of how quick it plays, because of how fun it is, and because of how much strategy there is every time I come back to it. It's just, I think, one that I personally am really glad we played, because this would have been one of those gaps, and I'm sure they exist for other games, but this would have been one of those gaps when talking about 2-player games that I just would have been like, I would have been doing a disservice talking about 2-player games and not have been able to speak to this one specifically.
For sure.
It's a great game.
And one thing I like too is even if you don't play it that often and it sits on your shelf, you take it off the shelf again, all the rules are going to come back pretty quickly, and even the powers on the little tokens that you get are all printed on the inside of your screen, so it's like a built-in player aid. It's very well designed in all regards, I think. Very, very good game.
So that is Caesar, Seize Rome in 20 minutes, my 2-player pick.
Very nice. And Dylann would very much caution you to not play it solo, correct?
Yeah, don't play it solo. It's not great.
2-player.
It is not a solo game. It's a 2-player game. Next up is for the family who games together. This is when you're looking to buy a family game for a family or your own family.
So I'll just show my pick first, and then I'll say what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I am going to go with Bohnanza, and this is one that I had multiple other games on my list at first. This wasn't even initially on my short list. And then I went back and checked the buyer's guide from last year again and saw which game did I pick last year. And last year I picked Via Magica, and I remember my main reasoning for picking that was player count. Because when we talk family games, a lot of family games out there only go up to 4 players. And I was like, well, like, for example, my wife grew up in a family with 4 kids, and their parent, and like they game together. That's a family of 6. There's a lot of families of 5, whatever. So I've sacrificed a bit of like the bigger experience of having a board game on the table that feels more involved, a bigger box, and that sort of thing to accommodate more players. So keep that in mind. It is just a very straightforward card game, but it's a negotiation game, and it goes up to 7 players. There's a 2-player mode. I wouldn't really recommend playing it with 2 players, but I've played it from 3 all the way up to, I think, 5 or maybe 6. I don't think I've gone quite to 7, but basically you have all these different bean cards in your hand, and you can never rearrange the order of the cards in your hand. And on your turn, you're flipping cards from a deck. You're going to either get stuck with them or have to trade them with other players. And then you have a limited number of fields in front of you where you can plant beans. Every field can only have beans of one specific type. So whenever you're forced to plant beans, and if you don't have room, you have to get rid of some of the beans you already had there, and you sometimes are waiting to collect more of these beans to get a bigger point value. So sometimes you're like, I wanted to get 12 of these before I harvest these to make room, but now I have to take this new card, so I'm going to have to harvest these 3, and I might get 0 points. So it's about managing this kind of influx of beans that you're inevitably going to get, but every round you're also trying to offload them on other people. You're trying to sell them as good deals, like, oh, you need this type of bean. And someone's like, yeah, but you're more desperate to get rid of it than I am to take the bean. Like, you have to pay me with that bean for me to take it. And you're like, oh, damn, okay, fine. Anyways, I wanted a game that went to higher player counts and that was very social. It's going to get people talking around the table, laughing. Excellent game, and it's kind of a classic, like, small, like, what year was this? Oh, whatever. This is 2016, but this is a new edition.
Yeah,
Anyways,
it's old.
Yeah, old game, but in terms of negotiation games, it's my favorite one, and it's always a good time. It is group dependent. If you have people who are normally quiet, keep to themselves, or people are kind of grumpy, not having a good day, you're probably not going to get the best out of this game. But
it sounds
when
fun.
it hits, it really hits.
Yeah, I've only played a couple times, but it's tons of fun, and yeah, it's great. The aspect that yours covers that mine doesn't, besides the higher player count too, is like you'll have more laughs and everything going on playing this than my pick, and I think that can be a really strong thing with family games and just kind of like having that connection and positivity around the table.
Right.
Great pick.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, to be fair though, I don't think either of these picks is necessarily better. They're just very different compared to a lot of the other categories we've had.
Yeah. So my pick for this category is a newer game called Fyfe, which we did cover in Owner Played Skip, that I talked about, and this is one of my bigger surprises of the year. And I picked it for this category because it is really wide reach, and like I think that I don't know what player count it lists. I think it lists age like 10 plus. I think that's more for the maybe. I don't know the exact reasons. I can guarantee you that you could have people like that are like 8 or 9 playing this game because there's not a lot going on. Yeah, it's more just like it's a simple game. You have 2 tiles in your reserve at all times. You're going to choose to place one, then you're going to draw a new tile randomly from the bag, and you're placing them into this grid that I think is 5x5 for 25 spots total. And when you place one, it's usually locked in unless you use one of the powers to kind of like manipulate things and move it around. But you're also taking these scoring tiles and placing them into like the ends of the rows and the columns or diagonals to dictate how that section is going to score. And once you put it in, that is locked in, and now the tiles you're placing are now going to determine they have to be in line with that scoring condition to get you a score. You're not going to score for every category, or at least it's very hard to, and you get to position them how you want and place them at the pace that you want to place them at. And you have these special abilities that if you don't use them, they're worth points, but if you do use them, you can manipulate your board to kind of get more points out of it. So you're really just working on your own personal thing. The player interaction comes from whoever is the first one to complete a scoring condition gets bonus points. So the minor player interaction makes it so you're not going to have this family setting where, people are really like doing mean things to each other.
You're not wrecking their board.
No, it's just this race to be the first one to claim something, which I think is a really like light player interaction. It will work for a family game like this. And on top of that, it plays up to 5, which my reasoning there was like, 2 parents and 3 kids, like up to a max of like you'd still be able to have everyone enjoying and playing it kind of thing.
I honestly forgot this went up to 5 because this was on my short list and I crossed it off thinking it was 2 to 4.
Oh,
but the fact that it goes up to 5 is a huge plus.
It's not a long playing game. There's a lot. There's interesting strategy involved with like odds and knowing what's in the bag, so you can learn some stuff from it too. But it's been a surprise hit for me, and I think more people need to play it. And it's a really attractive game on the table. Like it just checks a lot of boxes, and I think it really would function as a really good family game for a lot of people, and especially if you only have limited time and you just want to have this activity that you're kind of engaging with, and you could even like help kids out, and because it's not super dependent on interaction, like you're not, by helping them out or answering a question, you're not really hindering yourself all that much. So like it functions well in a lot of ways as a family game, and I just think more people should play it. So that is Fyfe.
Yeah. Great game. I really enjoyed the time we played it.
Yeah, big surprise. Okay, our last category is one we are going to do probably every time we do this buyer's guide, and that is our personal pick. There's no rhyme or reason necessarily. It's just a personal pick we wanted to highlight. It's not our favorite game necessarily. It's just something we think that needs to be on people's radar if you're thinking of buying games the holiday season.
Yeah. So I was very close to picking a game called Hansa Teutonica here because I just played it this past weekend, and my God, that game is amazing. But I've only played it once, and I don't know if it's for everyone. So I want something that is more universal, but is still one of my top games. This made my top 10 last year when we did our top 50 games of all time. That is Renature. This is a domino-based tile-laying game where you're basically taking turns, placing dominoes on a map. You start at the top of this map that's kind of cascading down. There's these small enclosures at the top, and as you progress down the board, these enclosures get bigger and bigger, and they're worth more and more points. And on your turn, you're basically placing a domino somewhere in the water, and then in these little enclosures next to your domino, you can place a different sized tree. There's trees of different sizes ranging from 1 through 4. Not going to get too into the rules. We have a how to play video as well as a review on the channel. Plus, we've talked about it again when we did our top 50 games of all time. The reason I have this here is, or there's a few reasons. One is that I think a lot of people overlooked this game. I think there were a lot of reviews that came out that said the game was just okay, or maybe some people, I don't need to call out any particular reviews, but there's a couple of reviews I saw where I felt like, did they understand the game, or did they just play it once maybe? Yeah. And I just feel like so many people overlooked this, also because it's kind of a remake of Mexica by the same designers, Kramer and Kiesling. But they bill it as kind of like this simply complex line from Capstone here, or from Deep Print, which is repurposed by Capstone, is kind of like family games that are that next step. So where there's a bit of that player interaction, where you introduce that like blocking each other, the meanness kind of thing. And with having colors or pieces of your own color on your board, as well as this neutral color, creates this environment where you're placing pieces in places where it literally just can take away points from your opponent. Sometimes it's going to get you points, but sometimes you're just losing points for your opponent. And if you don't place those pieces, you're going to lose points for having them on your board at the end of the game. So the game is forcing you to do this to other players, so it's not like a targeted mean thing. If you keep these to yourself, you're going to lose points. So there's all kinds of ways you can kind of break the system of the game. You can spend these tokens to take another turn or change the wild suit of the dominoes. Every single time I play this game, I think, why am I not playing this game more regularly? It's so good. It was also one of the best first impressions I think we've ever had from a game since we've been gaming together. I remember when we first played this, we're like, why did we buy a shared copy? We each need to own this game. I still keep this at my house all the time. I know eventually you're probably going to want your own copy, but you're going to have to pry this from my cold dead hands if you want it, because my God, Renature is good. It's good at every player count, but I would definitely recommend it most at 2 or 3. If you primarily play with 4, there's a lot of downtime and you might want to look elsewhere, but for 2 or 3 players, 45 minutes to an hour kind of range, amazing game, very highly interactive, and it's got that kind of inviting nature theme, nice artwork, very nice production. So I think it could be enjoyed by families as well as more like kind of heavy strategy gamers. Kind of stuff.
And I think you covered it all really well. The only thing I'll add again is if you want to see a playthrough of it, check out our live stream, because Braden and Carlo played it, and it was a great addition to that live stream.
And it's a great viewing game too. The table presence is just really nice. That's Renature.
And my personal pick is going to be Libertalia Winds of Galecrest, which is the reprinted version of Libertalia. This is a newer game, and it's out of the newer games I've played, it's one of my favorite newer games. I'm really, really growing on this one. I love it so much. Basically, you have this hand of cards that everyone's going to start the game with the same character cards in their hand, but there's a selection of, I think, like 40 you can choose from, so every game's going to be a little bit unique. And everyone has its own special ability, and you're placing them with these numbers on them to this area at the top of the board, and it functions as an initiative on how they're going to activate their abilities, but it also goes in a reverse order on those numbers and activates a different ability depending on if it has a day, sun, I can't remember if it's sunrise or daytime or whatever, nighttime, sunset or whatever it is, but like they activate in different orders, and it also determines how you're going to choose some of these little tiles that are on the board as well, which all have their own unique powers as well, based on which side of the board you're playing, or if you're
and they're not all good though, some are bad.
Yeah, some are bad and you don't want to get them. So it's one of those games that's a little bit hard to fully describe. You kind of have to experience it a little bit. I needed to play it the first time to really understand it. But with how much variability there is, all these unique abilities on these cards and how they work in conjunction, it's not just like, oh, I've seen this card before. It's this card works differently now that this card's in the game.
If it comes up early or late game, or
exactly.
When you,
and who uses their cards first, and it's out of their hand, and who still has it in their hand. Like
lots of mind games.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. There is some aspects of luck and stuff like that involved at different times, but it is so much fun. Like this is just one of the more recent examples I can think of just having pure fun with a board game I'm playing. I enjoy it so much, and I knew I wanted to have it on this buyer's guide, and it was a matter of which category, and I realized that all my reasons were so personal. I'm like, this has to be a personal pick. Like it's one that is just resonating so much with me lately. It's gonna continue to climb the more I play, and will end up being a mainstay where like it's a go-to game for me. And the original probably would have been that. I just never played the original.
Yeah.
So it ended up being this version, but I also think that this version is more attractive and approachable based on the artwork and the colors and all that kind of stuff.
And they have improved the gameplay too,
Totally.
with the reputation track for
system.
breaking ties, and I think they've added more cards in for the rolls or whatever, like the characters on the ship or whatever. I think there's
So it's a game I think I think a lot of people have played it, but I think like if you have not played it, definitely check it out. If you're looking for a game that is sort of like getting to be that next step, but is one that you could also function as like coming back to it multiple times. It could function in the category of like getting just that one game and constantly coming back to it. It checks a lot of boxes. I personally really love this game, and I just want more people to experience it. So that's why it's my personal pick.
Yep, and we haven't played it at all the player counts yet, but it does go 1 to 6, and pretty reliably plays in 45 to 60 minutes. So yeah, excellent pick. I really like Libertalia as well.
All right. And that is it. So that is our holiday buyer's guide for 2022. Let us know in the comments if you're going to use any of our suggestions for gifts and who you're going to buy it for. We're always really curious if anyone's going to do that. Or if there's any that you were surprised we didn't have on here, or you think there's categories or games we should consider for future years. Any conversation you want to have in the comments about that.
Or this person already has the game we suggested. You want another alternate recommendation? Let us know.
Yeah, otherwise, happy holidays. Thank you for watching our channel again, and we will see you next time.